book, you know all about this. You know about foreshadowing. It's this idea where if you have a character that you introduce in the beginning of a novel, so let's say there's someone that has red shoes and is carrying a briefcase, and you make a point to talk about this person at the beginning of your book, if that person never comes back, never does anything to enhance the plot, and just appears for some color in the beginning of the book, you've missed a vital plot point. Music is the same way. But often when we think about foreshadowing in music, we think about motives. We think about melodies that come back. We think about maybe foreshadowing a new key. So if we want to go from C major to G major, maybe you'll start sprinkling in some F sharps, or maybe you'll even use the relative or parallel minor of G major. So maybe you use G minor and you start to include some G flats and some E flats so that you can more easily move into G major. This is a very common form of foreshadowing because you're previewing the key that's about to come. And that way, when you arrive in the new key, when you arrive in G major coming from C, it's less of a surprise and it's somehow more satisfying to arrive because you've been given a preview of some notes that occur both in the major and the minor version of the new key that you've entered. But there's other ways to create foreshadowing in music too. Of course, we know about using motives. You can have a particular motive that comes back in different ways. You can, let's say you just have a minor third motive. If you use it in a particular way that's unique, where the rhythm is easily identifiable and you have that interval of a minor third, every time that rhythm and that minor third comes back, that's something that we pay attention to. But it's not enough to just put these ideas into the music and hope that that will provide enough coherence to make the piece work. You have to sort of say this minor third has some reason for being here. It creates an action. There's a consequence that always occurs as a result of the minor third. Maybe a soloist comes in. Maybe it introduces new ideas. Maybe it emphasizes important ideas. Whatever the reasoning is, it has to exist. So foreshadowing in music is one of these things that we often think about from a melodic standpoint. But recently, in the form and analysis course I'm teaching, which if you're interested in, there's a link in the description so you can sign up. You can kind of go at your own pace, and then if you have any questions, you can just ask me along the way. But the form and analysis course is something where we talk a lot about how composers create music. This isn't a course where you deal intensively with theory. The first 3 sessions are very heavily theory based because I want to get everybody on the same page. I want to introduce some concepts, and then throughout the rest of the 18-month course, I will reintroduce and sort of reteach a theory topic so that you don't actually have to do a lot of memorization outside of just watching the videos. That's kind of the goal. I want it to be easy. I want you to be able to come to this course, sit there, listen, and get what you can out of it, and then maybe watch it again at some point and maybe get a little more. But each video will reinforce the previous one so that you're really learning through kind of an apprenticeship where you're coming to these lessons and I'm teaching you concepts in a repetitive way, but also building each time and introducing more concepts. So it's not heavily theory based, although in the first 3 sessions, if you take the course, you'll be like, okay, there's a lot of theory here. As we go on, that diminishes and we start talking about things like, how do these motives work to push the piece forward? How is the composer actually developing these ideas? And so these are all things that you can kind of think about. And one thing that we were recently talking about, we're looking at a Bach chorale. It's O Mensch schau Jesum Christum. And we're looking at measures 8 to 11. And in the very first measure here, measure 8, there's a pickup that goes into the next measure. and it's a minor 1 chord, and we're in the key of D minor. Now, in the next measure, that 1 chord moves into a 4/6. Kind of strange at the beginning of a phrase to go from a 1 to a 4/6. That 4/6 is actually part of a Phrygian cadence. It's very common in the Baroque period. But what Bach does is he introduces this 4/6 in a very unexpected way, using very particular voice leading that just steps right into that 4/6, because he knows going from a 1 to a 4/6 is a little unusual. He knows it sounds weird, so he smooths it out in the best way he can, using that stepwise motion. And then the piece goes on, and we have several secondary dominants then the next measure that are all on scale degree 4. So it's a 5 of 4, a leading tone chord of 4, a 5/7 of 4, and then finally we come back to the 4/6 again in the primary key of D minor. But on top of that, it's actually a modulation that takes us into G. And so what Bach is doing is he's using this chord that stands out, this chord that's just a little bit off in the key. It's a little bit weird to go right in the beginning from a 1 to a 4/6. We expect to hear the Phrygian cadence. He doesn't give it to us. And so I talk about how this is actually a form of foreshadowing, because harmonically he's using a chord that has an expected resolution, but he doesn't give us that resolution until the end of the phrase, where we finally do get our 4/6 going to 5. We get our true Phrygian cadence. And so these are just some of the things that I'm talking about in this massive form and analysis course. And we're talking about how composers put music together. We're talking about how Mahler orchestrated his entire symphonies, how he, in orchestration in terms of instruments, of course, but also orchestration in terms of how he put the work together. And I just wanted to make it kind of provide a preview of this, where I tell you, foreshadowing doesn't have to be melody. It doesn't have to be motives. There are many ways to create foreshadowing in a piece. And this form and analysis course, it's just, we go into all these different ways, and then you walk away as a composer or somebody who just loves listening to music, or a performer, and you have a better understanding of the way the composer thinks. Because we always take these form and analysis courses from theorists, and they know what they're talking about. They have uncovered all kinds of hybrid themes, parallel structures, sentence structures, these phrases that are really important in music. But rarely is there a relationship to those types of phrases and how you can actually use those phrases in music. And so what I'm encouraging you to do if you're a composer is to start thinking bigger. Start thinking beyond just melodic construction, harmonic construction. Stop worrying so much about, okay, am I going from 1? Where can I go from there? Okay, I went to a 4. Okay, 4 goes to 5, and now I got to come back to 1. There's other ways to create music. All that is useful, and you should know it, because it forms, a few hundred years worth of music. But we want to go past that. We want to start to think about how the piece is organized creatively. What's the plot point of your piece? What are the key characters that once you introduce, you can't just ignore? You can't just introduce these characters and then not come back to them, not tell the audience how their story ends or how they relate to the story. So harmony, motivic development, melodic development, all these things come together in a very cohesive way. And that's why I'm so excited about this form analysis course I'm teaching, because it really helps people to understand how to integrate all these different concepts into whatever type of music they're writing. It almost doesn't matter what type of music you're writing. All of it can be effective. So, if that's something you're interested in, great. There's a link in the description where you can actually sign up for it. But otherwise, you can do this on your own. When you're looking at music, start to pay attention to those chords that stand out. Pay attention to those motives. Pay attention to the orchestration. There's so many things that composers do in a composition to make it highly effective.